Good afternoon. Thank you very much for your attendance. Given the 30-degree plus weather out there, I did think we might be presenting to an empty room, but you're all here, so thank you very much. For those who don't know me, while we're setting up slides, my name's Jonathan Day, and I'm an accountant from Carpe Diem. The clue is in the title, accountant. I'm not a technologist, and we're talking about bitcoins, and already just from a brief chat around the room, we've got a wide diversity of knowledge from knowing significantly more about hashing algorithms on them than I do, to not knowing what they are at all. So before diving into what Bitcoin and sort of the mining and sort of trading element of the conversation, I wanted to just start with what are they?
What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower, you can use them in every country, your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits. Let's look at how it works. Bitcoins are generated all over the internet by anybody running a free application called a Bitcoin miner. Mining requires a certain amount of work for each block of coins. This amount is automatically adjusted by the network such that Bitcoins are always created at a predictable and limited rate. Your Bitcoins are stored in your digital wallet, which might look familiar if you use online banking. When you transfer Bitcoins, an electronic signature is added. After a few minutes, the transaction is verified by a miner and permanently and anonymously stored in the network. The Bitcoin software is completely open source and anybody can review the code. Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing. When everyone has access to a global market, great ideas flourish. Let's look at some examples of how Bitcoins are already used today. You can purchase video games, gifts, books, servers, and alpaca socks. Several currency exchanges exist where you can trade your Bitcoins for dollars, euros, and more. Bitcoins are a great way for small businesses and freelancers to get noticed. It doesn't cost anything to start accepting them, there are no chargebacks or fees, and you'll get additional business from the Bitcoin economy. For your first Bitcoins and more information, visit weusecoins.com.
Thank you very much for that. So, much easier than words to get a big picture of the idea of Bitcoins and how mining fits into this purely digital currency. It's hit the newspapers and the media very significantly over the last sort of 3 to 6 months. So a lot of people have heard about it, but a lot of people don't actually realise what it is in any level, and the fact it's been going strong and growing for nearly 4.5 years since it set off. So, it's not, I'll give you one thing, it's not yet end user friendly. So for those who might be interested at the end of this of how you would get going, whether you're interested in the mining or trading or not, sort of whiz through a couple of the sort of administration setups of what you would do if you wanted to start Bitcoin mining. First up, you need a Bitcoin wallet, so an electronic equivalent of your wallet. The original one is that. I'll make sure this slide deck is available to everyone, so don't take notes to be able to grab the links from it, but I've put them in the slides. If you download this, it's a web-based or Unix-based application. It pulls down the whole transaction database, does allow you to mine. You can get quick and easy online versions. I would strongly recommend not using the online versions. At the end of the day, this is the wallet that has your money, digital or otherwise, in it. If you lose your wallet, you lose your money. So if you're putting it online in the cloud, you are relying on a third party acting as a bank that you don't know, and they're definitely not regulated as a bank. Different security risks to Bitcoins themselves. If you download this wallet and you secure it with a strong password, you should be reasonably safe from anyone stealing your coins. And unlike a physical wallet in your pocket, this one you can make multiple copies of. You can't make multiple copies of your cash when you lose it. You can make multiple copies of this. So do so, take them offline, so that even if you trash your computer or get hacked, just restore the backup. If you know your password, you haven't lost your currency. If you achieve that, you will end up with a wallet that looks like this. Very simple interface. Basically, that's your wallet. Someone else will have another wallet, and you are going to send digital currency from them to you or vice versa, using this transaction-free, nearly instantaneous, and global, with no middleman. What you will need to do with this wallet to actually do the service is actually set up your Bitcoin address. This is in effect like your email address or your bank account and your sort code number. So this here, all of them look like this, starts with a 1, unique identifier to you. This wallet will create as many of those as you like, which is where the sort of discussions around the anonymity of the transaction comes from. But just to sort of take away a little bit of that, what you see here is I've sort of wasted some computing power to create a vanity address with my name in it, so we can track it, because ultimately if anyone was interested in tracking these, as soon as you've announced this is your code, please pay me some money to it, there's a transaction trail to the code. QR codes, first very good use I've seen of QR codes, because you're not going to be finding yourself writing or these numbers down in your email addresses. But a QR code on the camera will pull that number straight into your wallet, so that would be the easiest way of sending and receiving your wallet addresses. Just talking about the anonymity side of things, I put that vanity address in. Can't really see it here, but there it is. Blockchain.info is a public website that lets you look at the full transaction log of every transaction that's ever happened on Bitcoin, from day 1 to ever on. So this, you will see, is like being able to look into my bank account and see every receipt and every payment that's happened to that address. So I would counter that anonymity is actually probably more open, if you wish it to be, than any cash-based banking. So, getting onto the mining, the bit that sort of fascinated me is the technology side. There's a room full of technologists here. We all know how the pace of technology progresses compared with the rest of the industries, but Bitcoin takes it to a whole nother level. I've started dabbling in Bitcoins about 12 months ago, and in that time we've gone through 4 generations of technology. Just whizzing through there. This was designed as open source idea as a decentralized peer-to-peer concept, supposed to be done on your computer using your computer CPU. Within a couple of months, the guys looked at the source code, recompiled it, programmed it to take advantage of the massive parallel streaming power of a GPU, the graphics processors. So your kids or any of gamers, you'll have your graphics cards in the computers, so they could use that and manage to get a 100-fold increase in mining capability. But very hot, very powerful sort of usage of electricity. Only a few months later, field programmable gate arrays. Ooh. I can't remember. So FPGA devices got reprogrammed to achieve the same as the graphics cards, but using a fraction of the electricity. So they stepped it forward again, using off-the-shelf technology, but applying it to this concept. And then, out of the blue, literally designed from scratch concept to delivery in under 3 months. In this case, or in my case, by a 21-year-old Chinese student who came up with the idea and ended up manufacturing it. The ASIC chips, application-specific integrated circuits, they've designed chips just for this purpose. Good or bad, the technology pace is quite amazing. So, start your mining. You will need some mining software. Okay, not very sexy, just download this. This is the original one, probably one of the best options because it is continually updated for all these different types of technology that you can point at it. And that will just talk to the hardware and talk to the database and just check if you're mining the coins. When this first started, it was all about solo mining on your computer. As the difficulty has become exponential over recent months, that is impossible now. So if you are considering mining, realistically to make any money at all, you need to consider using a pool. These are tried and tested. There's 3 or 4 very large ones. Your money is only staying with them for sort of fractions of an hour, so it's not like a bank, it's not like you're leaving your money in a central repository. You'll just pooling your resources to improve your odds of getting some payout, and then sharing it between your shared computing power. You will get your fraction of your coins. So onto the technology side of things, I started this about 12 months ago with the naive idea I would sort of remind myself of my youth and build a computer. It was going to be a very snazzy gaming rig like this. Put some nice graphics cards in it, mine some coins, get some money, paid for it, enjoy using it and justify why I had it. Didn't quite work like that. Hadn't done my research. Just as I was about to think about building that, that's what everyone else was doing to make any money at all. Very Heath Robinson, but these graphics gaming cards being used in abundance to make any money at all. Luckily, managed to change track. I've done my research, and the FPGAs just came onto the market. And basically, we're talking about Butterfly Labs actually put theory to reality and created this little box with a couple of off-the-shelf FPGAs devices in it. Third of the price of a computer, tenth of the electricity, creating more than 2 or 3 of those graphics cards in a gaming computer. So, thought, well, that's it. I was clever, I did my research, got the right toy at the right time. Little did I know, I hadn't done any homework at all, and about a month after getting it, and you saw in that video, the steady release of coins over time to control the currency, it hit its 4-year anniversary and the income halved overnight. So suddenly my quite clever idea started making pennies. Around that time I sort of backtracked and thought, okay, I'll do a bit more research. Thought, I'll go back to the gaming rig idea, and I built it. Did actually happen. 3 of these graphics cards in a normal PC. Didn't work on Bitcoins because we'd already missed that window, but I researched, there are lots of alternative coins because this is out open sourced, so lots of ideas being copied, but there was a second sort of silver to Bitcoin's gold, which was Litecoins, still going strong and worth looking at. That hasn't made the transition to the other technology leaps, so it's stuck with the graphics cards and CPUs. So if you've got a gaming rig, you can mine Litecoins with it and do very successfully. For the $2 or $3 it was making a day, the 90-degree heat and the 100% fan noise didn't go down very well at home. Around that same time, lucked in, that whole computer, ASICs actually became from a theory to a reality, and those 3 graphics cards, all that heat, all that noise and all that were replaced by one ASIC chip on a USB thumbstick. Greedy, because they've invented it, got it first to market, so they charged a couple of $100 for it. It will never make a couple of $100. It's going to make pennies. But as a proof of concept, if they priced it right, that could have released Bitcoins to every user, 5 watts, no power usage, so whatever income it makes was a genuine return on the investment of this idea. But we then had ASICs out in the wild, and it was going to change the landscape of Bitcoining quite significantly. And I had not wasted a lot of money, but a lot of time and research to reinvest the money I had made as a cautious accountant. And I tracked down this 21-year-old Chinese student who took that ASIC concept, built it, and took it to a full manufacturing plant locally, from concept to delivered in 3 months. There's a lot of scams out there, a lot of websites selling these sort of things, and they don't really exist. They are very, very rare. So the odds of a nice, shiny website offering it for sale and delivery next week is a lie. Do not get taken in by those sort of websites. But the technology does exist. So this one is here if anyone wants to have a look at it. It is basically about 240 of these with a lot of fans and a lot of power. But so that is looking at about the equivalent of 250 high-end graphics cards in a little box. And that, got the timing right, does currently make a lot of money. Especially if you're stupid and buy 3. If you can't quite see it there, but even that, sort of totally designed for purpose, is running at 35 degrees and counting. So I'm not too worried about the lifespan of it. It'll be the money generating will be worthless well before they die. But it was great. I don't know, I haven't done a straw poll, but I think that was the first ASICs in Jersey. There are only about 600 of those machines in the world at the moment, but now they've had the high-end costs of designing it, they can make them for dollars, so there will be very significantly more of them going forward. Why do you need something like that rather than the CPU? Well, behind the scenes, in the newspapers they were talking about Cyprus made this happen, banking crises and so on. This has been growing behind the scenes. That's just looking at the financial pricing of it, which we'll come to in the trading. behind the scenes, the computer network has been growing at a fairly ridiculous rate. That is the computational power of the network over the last 12 to 18 months. Turning that into English, that is about 1 million plus computers continually connected, doing the transactional support for this decentralized currency, and also mining coins as a reward for keeping the network going. It is growing at about 1.5% a day, every single day. So it's sort of the equivalent of 15,000 computers being into this network every day. So what we've created, I don't know, but it isn't just disappearing out of choice, it is growing at a very, very significant rate. So, in conclusion, don't want to be sort of a bit doomsayer, but the technology is there, it does work, you can make it work, and I sort of lucked in on the timing on the sort of technology changes. What I actually found fascinating isn't the money-making opportunity for this, but the theoretical concept of the coin and the sort of way of getting sort of global currency with no transaction fees, no middlemen and so on. And the technology enhancements that you've watched along the way in under 12 months has been quite fascinating. If you are interested at all or want to discuss it, what I would suggest is, realistically, if you don't have one of those in the corner already, but by the time you order it, it won't make you any money, you won't cover your purchase costs. If you just have a computer and you want to dabble in this, last week another coin was created which addresses one of the issues of all that power usage for no good purpose other than currency, called Prime Coin, which is actually solving prime numbers as its proof of work. That will still, because it's only released in the last week, it's like a penny share is starting and it's still doable on computers. If you have got a gaming machine sitting somewhere at home with lots of graphics processing power that's not being used at the moment, the Litecoin that I pointed out has carried on growing successfully and has probably doubled in price since I dabbled with it, so that would be another way of mining and getting into this. On the trading side, I didn't want really the one-word answer is the trading in this. It's a very, very volatile currency. I would suggest not trading it. I'm not a financial advisor, but you would very likely get burnt unless you're just doing it for fun. The volatility is caused by the interaction of this theoretical peer-to-peer currency with the real world. If you want to get bitcoins and you can't make them, you have to buy them. And if people receive bitcoins, they're going to want to swap them out of the risk currency into your home currency. And that volume of trading is actually its own weakness. Because Bitcoin is getting more and more successful, there is more trading going on back into actual currencies, and that trading is creating that volatility because it can't protect itself. Its supply and demand is fixed, so it just goes boom and bust around big trades. If you are an active trader, that is probably the nearest you'll see to being able to watch the markets and take advantage of them. But when there's a big sale or a big purchase, it will drop, and you could make a lot of money, but it could be the drop, the start to the end of the currency, so I wouldn't recommend it. Just for interest though, what hit the newspapers was this, because it happened to be around the Cyprus banking crisis, where everyone decided to borrow 10% of people's savings. And so the tabloids said, they've all moved into bitcoins to sort of get out of their locked-in currencies. And there was a massive, literally the trading volumes were higher than they've ever been, which caused that spike in the currency. But realistically, it takes 10 days to get through the KYC to even buy any of it, to move your dollars or pounds into this currency. So not very realistic. They couldn't leave the country. So that wasn't the reason. It wasn't ATMs, it wasn't the tabloid news. But that raising of its profile meant the day traders who did want to diversify, and this is just a risky, interesting investment, piled in and played with the pricing. So it did nearly kill it. It went from $266 to about $160 in the space of a week or two. But as you see, it did recover, and it's carrying on going at a similar sort of steady sort of $100 a Bitcoin level. If I just look at the last 60 days, this is one of the exchanges that actually act on the web as a bureau de change. So you can just swap your pounds or your dollars for any of the alternative digital currencies. If you look at these volume ranges, you'll see it's a $1 billion business at current prices, and it's moved about plus or minus 20% over the last 60 days with very high volumes. 10% of the total currency is changing hands, every 30 days. So this isn't a nice theory or just hoarding coins. $100 million is changing hands every 30 days. Just to put that into context, whether that's very volatile, very scary, doesn't make the news quite as interestingly. If you actually have a look at gold in the same period, it's been significantly more volatile, and that's supposed to be our safe haven currency in the recession. So, just to sort of wrap up a couple of other items, if trading's not for you and mining is way too much like hard work, but you're interested in considering the idea of looking at bitcoins or using them, easiest way into the market, I've worked with a UK company called Bittylicious.com. If you've got a standard bank account with Faster Pay enabled, go to Bittylicious.com, register your phone number, email address and your bank account. They will swap you sterling for bitcoins in real time, which will guarantee within an hour or your money back for a sub 1% fee. That's the sort of first, compared with sort of everything else is about 10 days of via US 20 quid exchange rates and so on. So that's the easiest way in, and it now, I've worked with them too, that does work from a Jersey bank account as well. So very easily, get your wallet, get your address, get some coins, and you can try spending them. Interestingly, from Bittylicious, I sort of said, well, what are your regulations? What you're in the UK, you set up a bureau de change. How difficult was that? Would we do it in Jersey? Said, spoken to HMRC, they've formally notified everyone that it's not a bureau de change, they're fully aware of bitcoins, they are watching it with interest, but at this current point they're very happy to have it totally unregulated. So you can set up a bureau de change like this with the HMRC's blessing in the UK, currently without regulatory requirements. If all of that still doesn't interest you, but you see there's $1 billion industry here, and potentially this is where I see an interest for this audience, e-commerce, BitPay.com, one of the original inventors of this concept, has joined a company called BitPay.com, and they just specialise in creating Bitcoin-enabled e-commerce shopping carts. So any shopping carts you use on any of your e-commerce sites can be already just have a button, pay by Bitcoin added, and these guys do all of the risk and all the work. So they'll take your UK pricing, swap it in real time at the point of the transaction into Bitcoins, take the Bitcoins, convert them into your home currency and put it in your bank account same day. So you get a normal trading income in your normal currency. They do it same day delivery into your bank account for sub 1%. Putting that in context, why not go for $1 billion of hoarded money that's waiting to be spent when you're paying probably a credit card provider 2 or 3% for the same privilege and waiting 4 or 5 days for the money. Back when Bitcoins first took off 4 or 5 years ago and no one had them, but no one really understood them, there was a concept of Bitcoin faucets, websites that from the people who had coins to the people who were interested in them but didn't have them and didn't know how to get them because they weren't bureau de change at the time, we had faucets. So just in that vein, what I'd like to do for anyone who's interested enough to download a wallet, set themselves up a Bitcoin address, if they send me that Bitcoin address in that email, I will donate them quarter of a Bitcoin. At today's price is about 15 quid. Just say thank you for giving it a go and seeing what it's like. What can you spend that on? Just as an easy come, easy go, to prove this is a real concept. Remembering, accountant, not a technologist, in the space of a day, I've knocked up an e-commerce site for this book to celebrate the fact we became a Gold Zero partner yesterday. And you can go to the website and pay in real time in Bitcoins. So, it is that easy to set up Bitcoin receipts. Just to wrap up, as I said, the mining is an interesting novelty, and I was most interested in the concept and the technology, but it really is quite a sort of hard entry if you're not already into it, and the trading is a very risky day trader type environment. But you can easily get into Bitcoins, you can easily tap into that $1 billion industry for increasing and widening your e-commerce scope, and there's very little risk to raising your profile saying you'd accept those Bitcoins. There's very good PR around the tourism elements on things like Germany, there's pubs and cafes and whole little villages accepting Bitcoins. In London there's a tavern. So all around the world there's pockets of people shouting about it, and that goes down very well. It's as simple as being able to use the bitpay.com thing and have a QR code reader in your shop, and you could be a Bitcoin accepting cafe tomorrow. And if you take me out for a beer, I will let you know what the income tax man told me about why potentially they're a very good idea in Jersey. That's it. If you've got any questions, thank you very much.
If you've got multiple copies of your wallet,
Yep.
package and so on, and some villain nicks your wallet, and he spends your coins before you notice, does your backup save you from that? Or?
No, but the wallet it's basically like secure email. You have a public key and a private key. So actually, even if you've got the wallet and the money's in the wallet, your complex password is your confirming and signing the distribution of the money. So they could have your wallet, they could have it, unless they've got your password, they can't spend it. They could receive it for you, but they couldn't spend it.
There's a maximum number of Bitcoin, isn't there?
21 million.
21 million. So
This is when they start testing me rather than
yeah, I was
asking
wondering,
any valid questions.
that's inherently inflation pressures. I mean, when there's a maximum number of Bitcoins that can possibly.
Well, their argument is that the whole concept of why they went digital and create Bitcoin was one of their fundamental principles was we'll issue 21 million coins and we will control the pace. So even though you saw the difficulty going up almost exponentially, they moved the goalpost on the difficulty, so the same amount of coins, 25 per 10 minutes, are issued to whoever's sharing that processing power.
So what happens when the processing power becomes far more expensive than the?
Well, so every 4 years they'll halve, and every 2 weeks it changes the difficulty to keep that constant release of money.
Counting on Moore's law.
Well, no, it works both, so it'll reassess. So if they all switch off because the money doesn't work, then it would get simpler, and then it would be viable to start up again. So it's self-assess, sort of balancing every 2 weeks. The reason for the finite is to actually fight the principles they think is wrong with economics as we have it, which is where governments can just print money and increase, devalue the money in your wallet by printing more money, and they're allowed to do it. For this, no one can control artificially increase or decrease the supply.
Yeah. This is legally recognized as a currency. For example, if I manage to get back more than I get the money, and I go to the police and say somebody stole me money, is it like that, or you have to?
Very interesting. I had about 20 slides on what is money, what is currency, whatever, and we didn't have a spare hour to go through them. But yes, most conversations, whether people are pro or anti digital currency, start with go, well, it's not money, I can't spend it. Well, obviously, you can spend it, you can pass it between yourselves, and you can actually transact with the real world. So it is money, but currency as we define it today, fiat currency, is legally agreed tender. This is obviously not legally agreed by any country as tender, so the government won't accept it, the taxman won't accept it to pay your tax bill. That is really the only definition of currency since we dropped the gold standard in the 70s.
How can you describe this as a non-fiat currency when it's not backed by anything?
So all fiat currencies aren't backed by anything.
Other than backed by debt, so what is this backed by other than an implicit understanding of the computer power is going to be
In
there?
theory, the proof of power gives it some tangibility, but their argument is exactly the same as the notes are of intrinsically no value. Up to about the 70s, when we actually said it was a promissory note to swap for gold, it had value. When we actually used gold and silver, it had value, it might be a different value, but the actual item itself had commodity value. When we moved to fiat currency, it's a piece of paper that we've mutually agreed and the government has told us it has a certain value. But when you put 10 or 20% of extra money into the population and say it's still the same price, we're just actually working on faith ultimately.
I seem to remember reading something about, was it the state of California or something has issued a cease and desist or something to
There
the
was.
Bitcoins operators.
Yeah.
So that they,
I mean, I find it very fascinating that every day I read sort of things like regulatory issues, cease and desist fights. Actually, that's kind of proof that people are getting interested in it, I guess, rather than it sort of dying a death. But in that case, that was very specific to MountGox.com, so the Bureau de Change. Yeah, the US is starting to take an interest in this, and they don't have a fundamental issue with Bitcoins itself. The actual cease and desist was because they didn't fill in the right paperwork to be a Bureau de Change in the state that they were in. It has subsequently, it was actually just one of the subsidiaries, and now they're back up and trading and with their blessing.
in the US, they are actually regulated then.
So in the US, where you swap between Bitcoins and real money, They have to be the equivalent of a money service bureau. In the UK, I would assume that, but currently there's not even that level of regulation until it takes off.
If there's a finite number of bitcoins, does that mean mining will cease? And the processing power, was it actually used for anything? You mentioned Filecoin.
Well,
What was the processing power used for?
So one of the negatives was the amount of processing power going into this. The counter would be how much processing power has Visa got in a data center in comparison. All you've done is distribute a very powerful set of computers across a lot of peer-to-peer network. It is using a lot of power. What it's actually doing is, its primary purpose is not mining. Mining is the byproduct to thank the people for creating the network. The network's job is to monitor and approve every transaction in real time. So that wallet I talked about actually has, and you saw my spending, it stores every single transaction between every party in real time, validates it and encrypts it in real time. So preventing fraud, chargebacks, reversing of transactions. So that's what the processing power is being used for, to keep that level of transaction history working in the real world.
Once mining stops,
Mining-
will stop the processing power.
It won't stop. It will go. If this, realistically, is this the first generation of a nice concept that will be regulated out of existence or being traded out of existence? 101 reasons why this might fail. But it's all going back to a nice theory concept. There are 21 million coins, halve every 4 years, and are constantly released. So the payout was that curve you saw in that video. It would actually take 140 years before this stopped creating bitcoins, and really that residual is just to cover the transaction fees of keeping the computers on, to keep the transaction network working. That's good.
Mathematically, it can never end, but it's
No,
just,
it stops when the processing power
Yes.
is more costly than the revenue from
You'll never
tiny
get that
fractions.
21 million,
Absolutely.
you'll never,
Yeah,
it's just going to be too
yes,
expensive.
absolutely.
An FYI, I think I heard recently that the sum of all the processing power of the Bitcoin network now exceeds the sum of the top 500 supercomputers.
I've read very similar articles. I mean, you saw the graph. It is a crazy amount of computing power. It is not remotely comparable that as the way tabloids have done it, because computing power is very generic. This is a very, very specific, specialised task, and they're not remotely comparable. They're just big numbers that someone has compared.
There's talk in the press and articles about Bitcoins being attractive to bad guys in society, drug dealers and so on. Why would, what's the attraction there if they've got to go through KYC and then there's all this transaction?
Like most fast-paced new technologies, they start in interesting dark corners or research or whatever. Yes, I think one of the first uses of this was Silk Road, so sort of corrupt. But in its current form, it is very, very akin to cash already. When you read the newspapers, it doesn't appear to be. It seems to be drug dealers and cash and anonymity, as I sort of proved a little bit. There is a full 100% publicly available audit trail. You can't necessarily see who's doing what. But I'm not sure if I was a money launderer or a drug dealer, I'd want a forever open public transaction of every transaction I did, however much I tried to sort of hide it away. And as you say, as it moves from Bitcoin to the real world, those bureau of exchanges already are regulated as with any other cash currency. So if I want dollars, for example, I can trade my heart away, but to even swap them, I have to have sent my passport, my utility bills, and they notify the governments if it hits the 10,000 cash limit.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's time we moved on, but I'm sure Brent will be happy with pushing that later. For anyone who's wondering if Bitcoin is a real currency or not, if you haven't had a drinks voucher tonight, go get one from Rob in the corner there. He's the CTO of Be Observed. These were paid for by selling 3 Bitcoin, so you've all been involved now.